brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. Now it's sippin' time.
Yes, it's sippin' time again. Hello and welcome to this Sip episode where everything good in life is worth discussing. As always, we are the best thing on at 2 a.m. This is a 1 hour show that's, entertaining like every third show maybe. We are currently banned in 4 countries, the state of Alabama.
Roll Tide.
And we're the subject of a restraining order from several unnamed Hollywood celebrities.
Hey, you said you were going to name them today.
Well, we know one of them, Scarlett Johansson, and if he gets anywhere near her, then there's going to be trouble. This is Made Man Bob. Joining me today are Made Man Brent.
It's always a pleasure to be here. I like the atmosphere here in the basement.
It's nice in the basement.
It's always nice.
We got Made Man Maury.
Good morning, Bob. Thanks for having me today. And by the way, you're looking very presidential in that outfit.
I like to try.
The top hat does it.
Well, yeah. I'm going for the Abe Lincoln look. And good old boy Harmeet.
How was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Brent, Maury, and myself are with the Bourbon Mafia. The Bourbon Mafia is a non-profit organization composed of bourbon enthusiasts and industry professionals. With representation in 7 states, our members combine a love of bourbon with a passion for charitable work. The group uses their love of our native spirit to raise money for local and national charities through rare bottle auctions and other themed events. And our show is sponsored in part by Fine Spirits in Cooper City, Florida, home of the Enigmatic Machine, serving great wines, whiskeys, and other spirits by the glass. We can find them where?
www.facebook.com/finespirits, or just skip all that and go to finespirits.net.
There you go. We are also brought to you by the Fort Lauderdale Whiskey Society. The Fort Lauderdale Whiskey Society, a great group of people here in Fort Lauderdale who combine a love for our lovely whiskeys. And we have meetings on a monthly basis, so check us out on the web.
And come drink with us. Come drink with us.
Our sip segments are all about wine, distilled spirits, tea, and coffee. And today's show is on Jefferson's.
Well, we're moving on now.
You give me that look?
Is JJ
He's never
dead?
heard that before.
Are you like complaining because? Oh, I get it. I used it when we did the Jefferson thing a couple months ago. Okay.
I'm sad alone in a boggy marsh, totally motionless except for her heart. Mud
No.
flowed up into lumps.
Come on.
She totally confused all the passing piranhas. She's up.
The presidency of the United States of America. Come on. You don't get it? Oh, good Lord. You heathens.
I knew
Our
what
regular
it was.
listeners
You're
get it.
dating- You're dating yourself.
Our regular listeners will remember the show we did a few months ago on the Jefferson's Wood Experiment series. This time we're going to be tasting some of their regular lineup of products, and we want to give a big thank you to Trey Zoller from Jefferson's who
Woohoo,
helped us
Trey.
out, sent us the samples for the show. And we're going to ask Maury to tell us a little bit about Jefferson's.
Thank you, Bob. As we discussed in our last show, Jefferson's was founded in 1997 by Trey Zeller and his father, Chet Zeller. With several generations of their family having been involved in the bourbon business as far back as 1799, it's safe to say they have whiskey in their blood.
I've got some in my blood right now.
I think you probably do. I wouldn't want you to be driving right now. Glad you're in the basement.
Yeah. Uber.
When they
Can't do
decided
that.
to open their business, they chose to name their new company in honor of Thomas Jefferson. Out of respect for his accomplishments, curiosity, and experimental spirit. They started up their new brand initially as a non-distiller producer, sourcing barrels from various sources, including the famed Stitzel Weller Distillery. And it was those barrels that were used to create the original releases of the Jefferson's Presidential Select series of whiskeys. Collectors all over the world have come to covet these bottles, especially the early releases of the 17 and 18-year-old Presidential Select, or JPS for short.
I didn't know enough to hold those. I drank them or sold them. Damn it.
As did most of us. Drink them. Recently, Jefferson's has taken the next step in their natural evolution to become a full-fledged distiller by moving their home to the Kentucky Artisan Distillery in Crestwood, Kentucky. As we had mentioned in our previous Jefferson's episode, Trey Zeller has a history of experimentation in the bourbon business, having been the driving force behind Jefferson's Ocean series, and has also experimented with various cask finishes, from wine barrels to rum casks to Wood Experiment series from our last show, where they took 4-year-old bourbon that had been aged in new charred white oak barrels and then finished it in 13 different environments and barrels, including new bourbon barrels, new wine barrel heads, and a new bourbon barrel, seared oak staves that were inserted into the barrels, or slow-cooked oak cubes that were inserted into the barrels. If you want to hear more about that process, you can listen to our show entitled Hail to the Chief in our back catalog.
Oh my. Oh my.
It was a good show.
It was a good
It
show.
was a good show.
Great show, yeah.
But for now, let's
Thank
get
you,
to
George.
the list of whiskeys from Jefferson's that we'll be tasting today. We're going to be starting with Jefferson's Very Small Batch, followed up by Jefferson's Very Small Batch Private Selection by Norman's Liquors of Sarasota, Florida. Then we'll be moving on to Jefferson's Reserve 90.2 proof, followed by Jefferson's Reserve Pritchard Hill Cabernet Cask finished, also clocking in at 90.2 proof. Jefferson's Ocean Voyage Number 9 at 90 proof, and finally Jefferson's Barrel Aged Manhattan at 68 proof.
All right. Well, let's have Brent tell us about our SIPS ratings.
Okay, with our SIPS ratings, we'll be discussing all of our segments, and we'll give it a rating after each review of these. And so we'll have our SIPS ratings, and our SIPS ratings go a little bit like this. 1 sip. Give me a glass of water to wash out my mouth.
Gangazine, water. Gangazine, bring water. Bring water.
2 sips.
That.
Nice.
You resemble that?
I resemble that remark.
2 sips. Nice. But what else do you have?
Well, isn't that nice?
3 sips. Interesting. What was that again?
Interesting.
4 sips. Let's keep this secret to ourselves. Pour me another.
That's classified.
5 sips. Oh my. I was unaware anything could be this good.
Oh my goodness!
Yes! 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 Yes!
All right.
Is Windows trying to kill your computer? What's going on?
Yeah, apparently. So
I
why don't
thought
we
that
get...
was the doorbell for the guy that was responsible for that sound.
Yes. Well, why don't we get starting to taste these whiskeys? So our first one is going to be introduced by Harmeet.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right. What's I've been drinking. Our first product is the Jefferson's Very Small Batch, and that comes in at 41.15 ABV or 82.3 proof. This first expression is a blended of 4 different Kentucky straight bourbon whiskeys of different ages and marries them together. And one of the components of this is a bourbon that was one of these bourbons is 55% of the total, and they do that to maintain a consistent profile. Now, I'm not sure about this. Maury, you met these guys. You're friends with them, I guess, Trey or something?
No, but I've been to a couple events where both have been there.
Are these all their own distillate? These new bourbons?
No.
These are sourced.
I don't believe any of their stuff that's on the market is currently their own. They are starting to distill, but I think that juice is still a couple of years away. This is all sourced whiskey, so they've been sourcing casks from all over, and then, as mentioned, blending them.
Okay. Well, I think they do a good job with the blend. I thought it was a little bit young. First off, the color was pale gold. And on the nose, it was just really sweet corn, a little toasty oak. I got some spearmint, yellow fruit. I mean, it's definitely not moonshine. It was just young. It wasn't like the traditional bourbon notes that you'd get. The palate was light, but I still had a good mouthfeel. When I first sipped it, I thought it was a little hot, but then I came back to it. I think that was like my first sip of the evening. So I came back to it, and it was good. Water did help it. The fruit came out more. I also got candied nuts. I got like marzipan, if not marzipan, but like almonds, like almost like a Jordan almond thing going on. The finish was allspice.
The spinach?
The spinach. No, there was no spinach. The finish was, I got a little bit of
Gladly pay you
allspice.
Tuesday for a bourbon today.
Oh, wow. Bringing out the Popeye. You are old, Bob.
Yep.
And, I liked it, but it wasn't great, so I could only give it 2 sips.
Well, isn't that nice?
All right. Brent, what'd you think?
I hate to agree with Harmeet. You know that, right? But this is the lightest color of all of them. It is, the proof is not, I think the proof brings it down a little bit. I think all the flavors are muted because of that. So, but, I do get the same kind of notes. I get a little bit of vanilla and butterscotch on the nose.
That was so muted, I didn't even get the vanilla.
Yeah, it was very light. It was very light. And even on the palate, I get a little bit, the oak is light, the spice is light, the tobacco's light. Everything is light on it.
Did you get that spearmint that I was talking about?
A little bit on the second time, just a little bit of that minty flavor on the second time.
Mm-hmm.
But the finish, it's a very short finish. I'm not, I wish it was, and I understand that it's meant for some people, and I think this is not enough oomph behind it for me. It's a little bit brought down too much. So, I'm going to agree. I'm just going to give it a 2 sips.
Well, isn't that nice?
Just admit it. There's nothing with enough oomph for you unless
no, there's a lot of oomph for me.
There's one thing that's enough oomph for the two of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I got everything in this damn computer.
Oh yeah,
that was very timely and appropriate.
Yeah, it's very
good.
much so.
All right. Well, we'll be back with Popeye and Wimpy in a minute.
Rolling clouds and crashing surf, iridescent dunes reflecting by the light of a rising, glowing moon. Seashore mesmerizing, night breeze hypnotizing. We've come across these back roads none too soon. Look to the left, to the right. Keep your eyes on the road, my darling. Wondering if we're only passing through. Open roads and open windows. My hand is yours forever, sweet love.
And we're back, and we're still talking about Jefferson's. And Maury, why don't you give us your thoughts?
Thank you, Bob. As much as I have difficulty agreeing with some of the people at the table tonight, I would agree with a lot of things that have been said. Number one, we are proof hounds. We do love cask strength. And I tried to think that this whiskey may just be that it's not barrel proof. But I think we've got some other products later on today that we'll be tasting that really articulate and demonstrate that regardless of proof, regardless of the fact that it's not cask strength, this whiskey is just really light. A lot of times we'll refer to these lighter whiskeys as entry level, good every day, good for people. I think some of the later expressions will be good for people who are relatively new to bourbon. I don't think this whiskey is really a good example of what bourbon could or should be. It really is not very complex. It's relatively one note. It's got a beautiful nose. That is its high strength, and it's kind of all downhill from there. For me, it went past my palate extremely quickly. It had a very short finish, and like I said, relatively one note and not a lot of complexity.
I think you and Brent were drinking too long. I thought the finish went pretty well.
Well, okay.
You just go on to the next whiskey too soon.
So in any event, it was not, it was certainly not a one. It was certainly not a wash my mouth out because it was obnoxious in any way, shape, or form. On the other hand, it just didn't have a lot of redeeming qualities for me. I think at a higher proof, it might be better. I just think that, and I didn't agree with Harmeet that it was young. I don't find it young. I just find it relatively light and
light,
muted in
I think light
in every manner.
Right.
So I think it's going the right direction, but it just needs more oomph, more of a lot of things, as Brent would say. So with that, I gave it 2 sips.
Well, isn't that nice?
All right. Well, you see, sometimes if we leave the basement door open, people wander in. So, stumbling,
Who left it open?
Stumbling down the stairs into our basement is good old boy Justin. You tried this. What'd you think?
Morning, gentlemen. I think that the small batch had the small, buttery, salty, buttery
closer to the
nose.
mic, Justin. There you go.
It was woody, and it was one note, but it did have a long finish.
See? Somebody was on my side about the finish.
What do you give it?
I give it 2 sips.
Well, isn't that nice?
We should have given him something better,
We'll give him something better.
Okay.
If he hangs out here long enough.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. It is definitely a lighter expression. I mean, that being said, it's extremely well made. It's well put together. It's just a much lighter whiskey than I think a lot of us like. We tend to like the stuff that's, the brick into the face. Lots of vanilla and caramel, citrus, definitely a lot of mint and spearmint on the nose. The caramel, the cinnamon, good spice to it. And I'm with Mr. Happy over here. I'm with Popeye. I think it had a pretty good finish on it. It wasn't, an all day finish, but I think there was definitely a good bit more to it there.
Well,
so
blow me down.
Bob, am I supposed to be Popeye in this analogy? What's going on here?
Yeah, you are Popeye. I give it 3 sips.
Interesting.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. The name of the product is Very Small Batch. We all know that there's no specific definition in the industry for small batch. This is probably one of the few that I'm aware of that's called very small batch. So what is a very small batch to you or to Jefferson's?
I know.
That's the thing. What is a small batch compared to everyone else? Are you comparing it to what you make internally, or are you comparing it to the industry in general? Because, I mean, if you're comparing it to the industry in general and you've got somebody like the size of Jack Daniels or Jim Beam who are, making, 25, 50, 100,000 gallons of proof product in an hour, anything is a small batch. It's a marketing tool. Jefferson's is not Jim Beam, so anything they have, I think in comparison would be a small batch.
Yeah, they use for the very small batch, they use 8 to 12 barrels.
Yeah.
So that's how they make their small batch. For a lot of people with a small batch, they'll use 200 to 300 barrels.
Yeah.
So this is why they call it a very small batch. And I like the concept. I just would wish they would up the proof on that very small batch.
All right.
Well, it may be that they've got some younger whiskeys in there that are making it a little bit lighter. The color's light, the flavors are light.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's not just a problem of proof, but a problem of blending in some much younger whiskeys into that backbone whiskey.
I think
what do you got there? More. What do you got there, Bob?
I think you just need to drink more.
Yeah. What's that you're pouring there?
Whiskey. You want some?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, our next up is another version of the Jefferson's Very Small Batch. This is a private barrel selection we picked up from Norman's Liquors over in Sarasota when several of us were over there for the Sarasota Whiskey Obsession Festival. Great show. If you can make it down, I highly recommend it. So this is basically the Very Small Batch, but a private pick. I'm getting a lot of the same stuff that I was getting on the regular one. I'm definitely getting the caramel. I'm definitely getting the citrus. And the mint on this one isn't nearly as high as the other one, but I'm definitely getting some dried fruit on the palate. And on this one, the fruit really seemed to come out a little bit with just a tiny little drop of water. And I think the finish on this one was longer than the other one.
I would agree with you.
It's not, again, it's not an all-day finish, but, for what it is and for the price, I think it's got a pretty good finish on it. I really liked it. I give it a solid 3.
Interesting.
Yeah, when I compare this one to the one we just did, this being a store pick, everything is kind of the same for me on this, but this is amplified. So I get more of the tobacco on the finish and more of the pepper on the finish, and the finish is a little bit longer. And so, because of that, because they've taken the time and they've picked something a little bit better. It is better than the regular small batch, and so I am going to give this a 3 sips.
That's the wrong noise.
Wrong button. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. What did you think, Mr. Happy?
Hey, I'm happy all the time. You can tell from my sparkling personality and my wonderful tone of voice. You know what? This was better. My notes were it was the first one on steroids.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just amped up. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
but how does their batch program work? I mean, I've done several private barrels. I taste a bunch of barrels, and I've had friends and colleagues come taste with me, and we decide on a single barrel.
But this is not a single barrel product.
This is our version of the small batch. So how many stores got this? I mean, what happens with this?
I have no idea.
I think what they do is they take it in, make it into a small batch, and then they barrel it from that.
Yeah.
And so they've barreled the batches together, and then you get to pick from that.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not sure.
I think it's definitely like you said, it's the one we just had, but amped up.
Right.
And definitely a lot of the stuff that was muted has come out.
Well, it's interesting because when we were all sort of doing our initial tasting, a lot of us initially thought there wasn't a lot of difference. And I was one of those who didn't think there was much difference between this and the regular. And as
it's not a lot of difference. It's just amped up a little.
But as the whiskey sort of evolved a little in the glass, perhaps as we've tried some other things and come back to it, I do think that the difference is a bit more magnified than I initially thought. I think it is amped up. At this point, if I had to taste them blindly side by side, I wouldn't. Not sure I would pick them as being the same whiskey, maybe even a different expression because it is more amped up. It's got a longer finish for sure. It's got more on the nose, and it's got a little more complexity on the palate. So it's definitely moved not only it's well made, but it's definitely moved in a much improved direction.
All right, Brent, what's your rating?
Me, I gave it a 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How about Harm?
I didn't give it a rating. Yeah, not yet. I kind of disagree with both of you guys, or all three of you gentlemen. I don't think it differentiates itself enough from the first one. I think you're either romanticizing it and you are just dupes of the system, and there's something wrong with all of you guys. So it's just 2 sips, man. 2 sips.
Well, isn't that nice?
I mean, the only reason I gave it 3 sips versus 2 sips is because I could tell the difference between the two, and I could see the improvement from being a single.
I can tell the difference. I don't think it's improved.
Well,
I think it's the same.
I'll cut to the chase and say I didn't think it rose to the level of 3 sips, although I do agree with you, Brent, that it's different.
Right, right.
For me, it's if we had a half sip, it'd be a different story. For me, it's still 2
exactly
sips.
That,
but I agree that it's better.
Nice?
I only wanted to give it another sip just to differentiate between the two of them. So.
What does Nigel say?
These go to 11.
Oh, that's what Nigel says.
Oh.
This doesn't go to 11. Not one of these. It is a notch up, maybe, but it's not enough to give it an extra sip. Justin,
what's our stray say?
Yeah,
I would give it 3 sips. I got a Febreze or mint nose on it, and then black licorice on the back end.
Did you say Febreze?
Yeah, I did.
Really?
Yes.
I don't find that an appealing note for bourbon.
It was decent, but not memorable, and that's why I gave it the 3 sips.
You're being kind.
So I can spray my couch with bourbon, and I can tell my wife it's Febreze.
Exactly.
Something like that.
You don't spray. That's just called spillage.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we've got Brent.
Okay. With this, this expression is the Jefferson Reserve. It's 45.1% ABV or 90.2 proof. And this expression started out in 1997 as a 15-year-old bourbon. And then in 2003, still using over 50% of that original mash bill, they began to blend up to 3 more bourbons with the original Jefferson's Reserve. So again, this is a very light golden in color. It's got a very pleasant nose with the traditional notes of vanilla, butterscotch on the nose, and when on the palate, it's got the hints of oak, light brown sugar, vanilla, a little bit of hint of tobacco. It's got a very pleasant mouthfeel. There's a creamy finish. It's a little bit short to medium finish, but it's very traditional. Very traditional. It's one that I can see that if you have, this would be one that you could have in your liquor cabinet, and it would be pleasant for everybody. There's nothing offensive about it. There's nothing that stands out about it or anything. Just a nice solid little bourbon that everybody should have. I'm going to give it a solid 3.
Interesting.
All right. What'd you think, Maury?
Maury's still pouring his second sip.
I'm still pouring. Sorry. I liked it. I think it's a step up. I'm disappointed that it's no longer a 15-year expression. We all know why that happened, probably in the interest of cost and supply, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think it's on the lighter side of bourbons, much like the first two expressions. It's definitely a light, entry-level, early morning whiskey, not something that you're going to expect to really hit you hard in the teeth in any way, shape, or form.
I think we have a show title, Breakfast Whiskey.
There you go. But I do think that this has as exactly as Brent has described it, a traditional bourbon nose. It's got all the notes that Brent mentioned, and I won't bother to repeat them except to say that it's very traditional in its bourbon nose, which is a sharp contrast to the first two whiskeys, which really had very little of the traditional bourbon elements to the nose.
Right.
I think on the palate, it's light, but again, it's got the beginnings of all the things you expect in bourbon: caramel and toffee and creme brulee and vanilla and things like that. Of note, it does have a much longer finish than the first two whiskeys. It really goes on quite a bit longer. Again, I wouldn't call it an all-day finish, as Bob would like to refer to.
But it'll last till lunch.
Yeah, but it'll at least last to your next sip.
The funny thing is he's sitting here laughing about bourbon at breakfast like he's never done it. Good Lord.
I'm laughing
Not
at
since
you.
yesterday.
It's what he had. It's what he had for breakfast this morning.
I'm a Scotch guy. I'd rather do Scotch any day.
I think for the entry level and or non whiskey geek, it's pleasant. It's not very complex. It's in my opinion, I like to call it one note. It's very monochromatic on the palate, but it's pleasant. Again, nothing offensive about it. But I do like the finish quite a lot, and because I like the finish and the nose quite a bit better, and to differentiate it, as my colleague said, I'm going to give it 3 sips.
Interesting.
All right. Justin, what'd you think?
I think that the nose was woody and very spicy. It was pretty light on the front end, but a little bit of spice on the back end. And I tasted some burnt chestnuts, and I would also give it 3 sips.
All right.
Interesting.
Burnt chestnuts. Has anybody else gotten burnt chestnuts?
I was going to say.
Yeah, well, I went out one time to this nude beach, and I fell asleep. And
yeah, there you go.
It was bad. It was very,
I think
very
those
bad.
would be called burnt peanuts.
No, he's talking about the nuts somebody put on his chest.
He's being overly generous with himself.
Look, I'm this good old boy Harmeet here, in case you couldn't tell from the
swarthy accent.
Swarthy accent. I'm doing it like this, so let me say, I agree with Justin. There is some nuttiness here, but neither Maury or Brent said it. To me, it's marzipan. It's that almond candy type thing coming out. Nobody got that almond note? No?
I got a lot more vanilla out of it.
More vanilla.
And now for something completely different.
Yeah. This was more the traditional. I tasted some of these, a batch of this when they first came to Florida, and it's a different animal from then. This current stuff is good. There's well-made whiskey. It's just doesn't distinguish itself enough. And, hey, I'm still drinking it. I gave it 3 sips. I'm back again.
Interesting.
All right. Well, let's see.
Bobby Joe, did you rate this one?
No, I didn't actually. A lot of oak and spice on the nose, dark chocolate, kind of cocoa.
No chocolate.
I definitely got the sweetness. I don't know if it's marzipan or cotton candy, but I definitely got that sweetness on the back end. A little bit dry, a little bit of butterscotch, a little bit of clove spice on it. A good solid whiskey. I give it a 3.
Interesting.
Good call on the clove. I didn't taste it till you said that.
Yeah, it's all the way in the back.
Spice,
yeah, it's not quite like a baking spice mix, but I'm definitely picking up clove on it. So.
Yeah.
All right, our next product is going to be introduced by Maury.
All right. Thank you, Bob. So the next whiskey is the Jefferson Reserve Pritchard Hill Cabernet Cask Finished. Clocks in at 45% ABV or 90.2 proof. Now, there's a novel proof. The second Jefferson's to be released with a wine barrel finish, and the first was a Groth Cask Cabernet finish. This expression was released in the fall of 2016. It is a blend of 3 different bourbons that were blended together and then finished in barrels previously used to age Pritchard Hill Cabernet Sauvignon from the Chapelet winery.
Love that wine.
Yes,
Love
absolutely.
that freaking wine.
Chapelet is delicious, but their Pritchard Hill is their high-end reserve, if you will, version of their Cabernet, and it is fantastic.
Over the top.
Yeah, over the top. And hard to get.
I have some.
Yeah, but generally speaking, hard to get, hard to find. And when I saw that, I just couldn't resist buying the bottle the minute it hit the shelves. I love the Pritchard Hill. I do love cask finished whiskeys, and this one is no exception. It's got some nice color. It's got a hint of redness in the color.
Yeah, just it when the light hits it a certain way, you pick it up. When you hold it down on a piece of paper, it's not readily apparent, but it just. There's that glint.
Yeah. And
you can't tell anything in the basement anyway. You need to get better lighting in here, Bob.
I have one light bulb.
Yeah, but it flickers all the time. I thought incandescents were supposed to go the door.
Power's not good here in the Eastern Bloc. What do you want from me?
What if we upgraded that light bulb from 20 watts to 30 watts?
He can't afford that.
What,
he spends all his money on whiskey.
Good Lord. That's like 50% again on the electric bill around here. Come on, man.
Anyway, moving right along, the nose on this whiskey is by far the most complex of any we've seen. It's got just lots and lots of interesting layers, and you definitely pick up the wine. There's definitely more wine influence, I think, on the nose than anything else, including the palate. I think the palate is interesting. On the palate, it's got a nice body. It feels good on the palate. It's got nice weight. It coats the mouth. It's got the traditional bourbon flavors of caramel and vanilla, and then it's got these complex dark fruit flavors that seem to come out. And then the finish. The finish is nice and long.
All right, well, we'll get back to Maury in just a second.
It's not just the destination, but baby, the whole elation of riding down this lover's avenue. As slow as the willow blows, or as fast as the whirlwind grows, we glide beneath the stars in cobalt blue. Look to the left, to the right, keep your eyes on the road, my darling, wondering if we're only passing through. Open roads and open windows, my hand is yours forever, sweet love. Our eyes ahead on these back roads with a view.
All right, and we're back, and we're talking about Jefferson's Pritchard Hill Cabernet Cask finish. Maury?
Thank you, Bob. As I was saying, the finish on this whiskey is by far the longest of anything we've tried today.
Is there any left?
There's not much.
I might have killed it.
Here's some over here.
It's delicious.
You,
it's
sir.
got a nice finish. Again, it's a complex whiskey. It's definitely different from everything else we've had. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it's a really nice bourbon for wine drinkers. Again, not a huge wine influence, but definitely something that adds dimension to the whiskey, adds body, adds color, adds palate, adds finish. So with that, I give it 4 sips.
That's actually a resounding endorsement, actually.
All right.
I'm surprised.
Brent, what'd you think?
Okay. Well, the color there is a nice amber gold color. That's what I like about it. You get that.
You don't get the red glints? I get red glints.
It's just, just ever so subtle. It's not even it's more of just sort of a reddish glow to it.
Yeah. And on the nose, I get a lot of fruit. That's what comes out to me right off the bat is I get, it kind of overpowers the bourbon notes on the nose with the fruit. And then as soon as you taste it, you get that sweetness right off the bat. And then as you go back towards your finish a little bit, when you start to get to your finish, you get the bourbon notes, you get the tobacco, the pepper, and I get a little bit of hint of brown sugar. And this is the longest finish that we have of any of them. Not quite what I want to what I want in the bourbon. It's a little bit too sweet for me. I can see where some people are going to enjoy this a lot, but I'm just going to give this a solid 3 sips.
Interesting.
Mr. Happy?
Well, again, the color we've gone over and over again. Copper, gold. I got copper gold, ruby glints. The nose, right off the bat, was caramel, but then it went crazy with lots of wonderful complexity coming out. I got bread pudding. I mean, I smelled bread pudding with red fruit.
Yeah, you're right on that.
This was gorgeous. I'm just coming back to it. And one thing that hit me was spiced plum. Yeah. There was, red fruit, and there was some yellow fruit, and then it went to spiced plum, and it was like, wow, this is really great. And I wanted so much to love this whiskey, but I agree with the other gentleman at the table. Even though it translates into the palate, it didn't bring enough to the palate. It was a softer version of the nose, great traditional bourbon. I wanted a little bit more complexity on the palate. So I wanted to give it 5, but it didn't quite get there. The nose was stunning. So because the palate let me down, the finish was good, I gave it 4.
This is Justin, the Wandering Drinker. I got a red velvet nose off this one. It was very light flavor on the front end, and there was a rose petal short finish on the back end. I gave it a solid 3 sips. It was an interesting bourbon.
Interesting.
I'm looking for that rose petal now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no, I think you hit it with the bread pudding. That definitely, it's like a cross between bread pudding and a fruit cake.
Because I get the plums and the raisins when you.
Yeah.
Oh,
the nose is like it's like a giant bowl of like macerated fruit, jammy fruit, red stewed plums, and cherries.
But the caramel, the bread is there, the custardy, bready note going there.
I get much more fruit than bread or custardy.
Really?
I think the wine.
No, the fruit's definitely there. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I do agree on the fact that I think there's nothing wrong with this whiskey. I like it a lot. I'd be happy to drink this on a regular basis. I think sometimes it's one way and sometimes the other. I think the nose is actually even better than the palate on this one. A lot of times it's the other way around. But on the palate, the wine influence is not as big on the palate as it is on the nose. I pick up the jammy, deep, rich, jammy fruits. I pick up a little bit of nuts on it. I definitely pick up that floral character on the.
You're always picking up nuts, Bob. Sorry.
Yeah, that's how I found you.
Well, Justin used to walk in here.
A little bit dry. The wine influence on it was great. I think it was a good pairing. It's got a really good finish on it.
Did any of you guys try this with water?
Yeah.
Right?
And
nope.
I don't think the water helped it. No. And I give it a solid 4 sips.
That's classified.
I just tried it again with water, and I think this will actually make my personal collection. This is coming home with me.
Really?
Not if I have anything to say about it. All right. Our next expression is going to be introduced by Maury.
I just did the last one.
Oh,
I get to go
you
again?
did do that.
He wants to drink. Leave him alone.
Drink.
I'll introduce.
Who was doing this? This is
Ocean.
It was Brent. You wanted to do the Ocean.
The Ocean? Okay. Yeah, this is another of Trey Zeller's. This is the Ocean Jefferson Ocean Voyage 9. Comes in at 45% ABV or 90 proof. It's another one of the experiments. This is the Ocean release. It consisted of 5 barrels of new make whiskey that was put on a research ship where it remained for 3.5 years before being bottled.
That was Ocean 1, yeah.
That was the original, yeah.
Yeah, these last ones I think are only a few months, or like 3 months to 6 months or something. But the bottles from that first small release were immediately grabbed by collectors and some of us drinkers. With that initial success, Trey has now commercialized this experiment and sent hundreds of barrels around the world. Each voyage of Jefferson's Ocean typically crosses the equator 4 times, visits 5 continents, and over 30 ports on the average sailing. Now, that's the kind of sailing I want to be on.
Yeah, I know you've been to a few ports. You are a sailor.
Yeah. So this Voyage 9 was initially released to the public on January 10th of 2017. Now, the color, when you think about it being on a vessel, and all the movement it's going to get. You'd think that the color would be darker, but I really don't see a lot of difference in the color of this, compared to the regular Jeffersons. So it's about the same, and they brought it down, and I think maybe that's because they brought it down to 90 proof instead of kicking it up a little bit. So it's the same kind of color. The big difference in this and the nose on the palate is that you can tell everything is amplified with it from the regular. So I get the same notes on the nose, but it's all amplified. So it's just like going from the small batch to the regular, amplified it up. And now
these go to 11.
Yeah, and this went up to the ocean, so it amplified it even more. So I get more oak, more vanilla, lots of that, lots more tobacco, and a lot of pepper. And the finish lingers a lot longer, and it leaves a lot more tobacco than on the finish than I would prefer. But I enjoyed this and the previous expressions a lot more than this one. But I am going to give it a 4 sips.
That's classified.
All right. What'd you think, Maury?
I like the ocean. I thought that again, echoing what Brent said, it had with the exception of the Pritchard, it definitely had the biggest nose. It had a lot going on, had a lot of layers on the palate. Nice, much more traditional bourbon, typical flavors of.
It's going to be hard to beat that nose on that Pritchard.
No, it's not going to beat the Pritchard.
Yeah, that nose will blow your head off.
Right. But again, the Pritchard nose is not a traditional bourbon nose.
No,
it was really
it's not.
A wine lover's nose.
Yeah, if you're a wine lover, man, that is the one for you.
Yeah, it really was very nice.
I've loved a wine or two in my time.
Yeah. But in any event, I think this is an extremely well-made bourbon. I think that it's got all the makings of the things that you look for. I like the fact that everything was amped up a bit. To quote Brent, amped up nose, amped up flavors, amped up on the palate. The finish was definitely quite a bit longer. And with the exception of the cask finish, it was definitely my favorite expression so far of the standard Jefferson's line. And by the way, those cask finishes are fairly limited. Once they're gone, they're gone. So if you are a wine lover and you're interested in the Pritchard, grab it while you see it. The oceans, they've had a number of voyages. I don't see a lot of variation from voyage to voyage. Early on, when we were about 3 or 4 voyages in, some people debated whether voyage 3 was the best of the bunch, and had they gotten it right after a couple that may or may not have been right. I think that they've really got it standardized and pretty well down, and I really don't see a lot of variation from voyage to voyage. I like it. It's a good whiskey. It ought to be part of most people's collection. It's well made. I give it 3 sips.
Interesting.
All right. Justin, what'd you think?
I got raisin on the nose, and I thought it was a very, very good nose. The bourbon flavor itself was traditional, and it had the standard finish, and I would give it 3 sips.
Interesting.
All right. Mr. Happy?
I am the iconoclast at the table.
You couldn't spell that if your life depended on it.
I have
name?
Siri to spell to me for me.
What's his name?
Happy, Mr.
Sir Happy. I disagree with you guys. I think you're drinking the Kool-Aid. I think Ocean Voyage finished spirits are something that are awesome. I've tasted a few. My favorite happens to be Celt XO, cognac. This one, I'm not getting the salinity. I'm not getting the depth of character. I'm not getting any of the color that you'd expect.
Okay, well, I hate to interrupt, but I agree with you. Now, if you're going to talk about comparing to other things, it does not have salinity. It doesn't have ocean characteristics.
Right.
But you're right. What we discussed was it's an evolution of the previous products of the reserve and the very small batch.
Again, I think you guys are drinking the Kool-Aid because I don't see this as an evolution. I don't think it changes that much. And I think frankly, to me, it smelled kind of green. It smelled young again. You guys are... Well, I mean, the raisin note, I'll give that. Justin, I think you called it there. But I can't give this any more than 2 sips. I was disappointed.
Well, isn't that nice?
Nice of you.
I'll alert the media.
Anybody got a salt shaker? If we had a little salt, he might like it better. Have
Yeah,
some salt.
exactly. I don't know. He's somebody. Apparently, last night she wasn't nice to him.
Bob, tell us what you thought.
I thought it was very good. I thought it had an excellent nose to it. I actually picked up a little popcorn note on the back end of it. It's definitely got it's a lot more rich and dense, a little more
Seriously?
thick than the regular standard offering. Yeah. There's a lot of spice
am I
to
drinking
it.
the same sample you guys are?
Justin, put that salt
we're
shaker
not.
down.
We're not giving you what we're drinking. What are you kidding? We're not spending good liquor on you. Old leather, a little bit more dry, dark wood. It's got a little bit of a dry finish to it and a much longer finish. Yeah, I give it a solid 4.
That's classified.
4.
Wow. I must be pouring the wrong sample. I don't understand what you guys are drinking.
Well, you never learned to read, so that doesn't surprise me.
Hey, I'm not making any political jokes today, so I won't do that.
It's not political. You just don't know how to read.
I was going
right.
there.
Where's our next one? All right, Maury. We're going to have you
Okay.
do the next one.
For our last
I want to read to you my actual note. Meh.
It's about all I can spell.
For our last
that's what I can
expression, we're going to have something completely different. This is the Jefferson's Barrel Aged Manhattan at 34.
And now for something completely different.
Thank you. 34% ABV or 68 proof. In April of 2013, Trey was at a book launch party for his friend, Chef Edward Lee, where he met David Granger, the editor-in-chief of Esquire magazine. Trey had made up a barrel-aged Manhattan cocktail made with Jefferson's for the occasion, and David liked it so much that he and Trey spent the next 2.5 years developing different recipes to create one together. They narrowed it down to 3 recipes and aged batches of each in a 53-gallon barrel before finally selecting the one they brought that they thought was the ultimate Manhattan. It starts out with 125 proof bourbon, which is blended with both sweet and dry vermouth, some barrel-aged, spiced black cherry bitters, and then it's placed in a used bourbon barrel to age and mellow for 4 months. This spirit is designed to be chilled and enjoyed. It's got a nice color. It's a traditional bourbon color. If you didn't know differently, you'd probably think it was bourbon. On the nose, there's a lot going on. Definitely not as much as some of the Manhattans, but you definitely pick up some hints of citrus, a little bit of the bitters, and a hint of the vermouth in there. On the palate, it's a very nice effort. It's not my favorite barrel-aged Manhattan, but I think it's very pleasant. It's very middle of the road. It's got the usual flavors that one would expect in a Manhattan. It's not too sweet. It's definitely not too bitter. It's definitely showcasing the whiskey along with the vermouth and the bitters. However, the one thing I would say is, although I like my Manhattans chilled and up, once you mix this with ice, whether you shake it or you stir it or you pour it on the rocks, it really dilutes down very, very quickly. I think it would be best enjoyed with the bottle either kept in the freezer for a short period of time or in the refrigerator and served fairly chilled and perhaps even in a chilled glass, so you don't need to dilute it very much. This is another one where perhaps whiskey stones would be of a benefit. So I would have liked to see them make it just a little bolder, a little bit more of everything so that it could stand up to ice. I think the beauty of these ready-made cocktails is you pour them over ice and stick them in a to-go cup and you're ready to go. So I liked it very much. I like where it's going. I think it's a very nice offering. And with that, I give it a solid 3 sips.
Interesting.
All right, Brent, what do you think?
Well, I like the concept of it. You know, you get a drink in a bottle, and that's basically what you get. So when you get the hints of, on the nose, you get the hints of cherry and everything. But, for me, I would have liked a little bit more oak in it, from the barrel coming through. But for somebody to have this and not have all the ingredients on their shelf, it's a great thing. So I want to have that. I want to have that in the bar. And, so I'm going to give it a solid 3 sips.
Interesting.
Harm, what'd you think?
I agree with Brent. It needed a little more time in the barrel, so I'm going to give it 2 sips.
Well, isn't that nice?
Now, Justin, what'd you think?
The bitters hit you on the nose right away. It's really well balanced, and as a wandering drinker, it's the way to go.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. You can catch all of our episodes online, as well as on SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, PRX, and Spreaker, our native media host. iTunes, Google Play, and our own Android app are the easiest ways to enjoy the show on your phone. Just search for Sips, Suds, and Smokes on iTunes or in the Google Play Store. We love your feedback. You can reach us online at info@Sips, Suds, and Smokes. Our daily tasting notes go out on Twitter every day at Sips, Suds, Smokes, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news. Please do us a favor, and if you're listening to this episode, especially on iTunes, please rate this episode. It's a big help to us. It helps us with our ranking, and it also helps us to know that we're doing a good job. I want to thank our host for joining us today. Thank you, Brent.
It's always a pleasure to be in the basement. It's a little bit damp this time of year, though.
Thank you, Maury.
Thank you, Bob. I'm sorry I didn't dress more presidential like you today.
All right. Thank you, Harm.
One day they'll change the Constitution so I can be president.
Thank you to the wandering guy who just came into the basement.
Thank you so much. It was a great place to wander into.
All right. For Sips, Suds, and Smokes, this is Made Man Bob, and we thank you for joining us. Remember, life is too short to drink cheap whiskey.
I
It's not
really
all cheap.
cannot disagree with you every time. You got to change that outro. It's life's too short to drink bad whiskey. There's good cheap whiskey out there. No?
There's no cheap whiskey at your store. That's for dang sure.
It's evil. Whiskey starts at $10 in my store.
Boy, is this great!
For the airplane bottle?
I've got a $100 airplane bottle at the store. There's some crazy stuff there.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, my.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.